right, here we go. Let me share the screen. Right, okay, we will get there. Okay, so now we're ready to get started. So we're starting a new she'ela as follows. Hashavas Aveda. So just to review, yesterday we learned that if I receive a gift from someone else and that I can convert that gift into considerable capital because there was something defective in the item, and I'm able to now generate income through that by going back to the manufacturer and embarrassing him enough so that he gives me a really nice gift of those 26 bottles. So then I have no obligation halachically to the person who gave that defective item to me. That was what we learned yesterday. Let's look at the new tshuva. Hashavas aveda be'isha chashuva. Returning lost items to an important woman. Now, what does that mean? So, or not to an important woman, does an important woman have an obligation of Hashavas aveda? Im isha chashuva chayevet lahashiv aveda, im ze lo mikavoda la'asot kein. Is she obligated to do the mitzvah of Hashavas aveda if it's beneath her dignity to do that? Now, what?
Yeah, why wouldn't?
So what we're going to see is that the classic case in the Gemara is that a Talmud Chacham is sometimes allowed to exempt himself from the mitzvah of Hashavas aveda, because he can say it's beneath my dignity to have to schlep around a donkey around the marketplace, or a dog, or whatever it is, or some other lost item, to have to schlep it around and make an effort to return it if I have to go to yeshiva and give a shir, and it's going to make me look bad in public, etc., etc. That's the attitude of the Gemara with having to do with an ish chashuv. So let's learn about an isha chashuva. I don't know why this specific, and who determines who's an isha chashuva. By the way, this is true. The Ramah says this, that today all of our women are chashuvos. All of our women are important, and therefore it has to do with the mitzvah of reclining at the seder. So an isha chashuva doesn't have to recline at the seder, and nowadays all of our women are chashuvos, so women are exempt from reclining at the seder. Okay, so anyway,
I thought reclining was a sign of royalty.
right. So what is it? So what am I misremembering?
I thought they can recline.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
I don't know. I remember it's something.
Yeah. Yeah, here it is. The mitzvah of Heseba. The Gemara clearly delineates the requirement of Heseba for the eating of matzah and at least 2 of the 4 cups of wine. A woman who is in the presence of her husband does not require Heseba. However, if she's an important woman, she would lean. Okay, the statement raises a number of questions, which I hope we'll cover over the course of the discussion. So she's allowed to lean. She's allowed to lean. But so we generally say that a woman is allowed to lean bisman hazeh, but she's exempt from doing so.
That's what I was thinking.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that inclination. Yeah. Okay. All right, and then pull out our 11 gauge. All right. HaMishnah Omeres b'Maseches Kiddushin. The Mishnah says in the Gemara in Kiddushin, Kol mitzvos aseh she'ein hazman grama echad ha'anashim ve'echad ha'anashim chayavim. All non-time-bound mitzvahs, both men and women are obligated to fulfill. The HaGemara Sham, I think that's a printing error. Sorry. Gemara Sham manta et mitzvat hashavas aveda bichlal mitzvot she'enas man grama shisha chayeves b'hem. The Gemara itemizes a number of examples of non-time bound related mitzvahs that women are obligated, and the mitzvah of hashavas aveda is one of them. Ve'al kain pashut she'ein havdel ben ish leisha ki gam isha chayevet b'mitzvahs hashavas aveda. So clearly there is no difference halachically between men and women in this mitzvah. Women are also obligated to return lost objects. Ve'ikshu shama toisves, madua tzarech lahagid shanashim chayavot mitam she'ena zman grama. Alo yesh baze iser lo ta'ase kamo shekatuv lo tuchalit aleim. So Tosfos asks an interesting question. The mitzvah of hashavas aveda attached to it is also a mitzvah lo sase, a negative commandment, and we know that there is absolutely no difference between men and women when it comes to negative commandments, right? And that's why women are obligated in all the mitzvahs of Shabbos, because there's a negative commandment, and so we link all the positives to the negatives. So, because the Torah says you may not shirk, or you may not hide from your obligation. When it comes to negative commandments, there's no difference between men and women. One of the interesting answers that Tosfos suggests is that the negative commandment is not a standalone negative commandment. It's only there to reinforce the positive commandment. And for that reason, it's not considered to be a bona fide mitzvah lo saseh. And that's the reason why, without this argument that it's a non-time bound related mitzvah, I might have thought that women are exempt. So the poskim suggests the same idea as far as Parsha Zohar, which we just read this past Shabbos. The question is the mitzvah of Zohar a time-bound mitzvah because it's only once a year, or is it perennial? Is it constant? And the fact of the matter is that it shouldn't make a difference, because after all, there's a negative commandment of you shall not forget. And if so, why would you think that women are exempt? And the answer that is offered is the same idea, that because the statement lo tishkach, don't forget, is only coming to reinforce the positive of Zohar, you shall remember, it's not a real bona fide mitzvah lo saseh. Now, he says, and I'm just reading footnote bet, Di'inei kosov hachsam sofer, b'shut marcheshes, shemitzvas, zechiras, umechias, amolek shayechet bayom velo balayla. There are poskim who suggest that the reason why the mitzvah of remember what Amalek did to you is a time-bound mitzvah, because it only applies during the daytime and not in the nighttime. And therefore women would be exempt. Because of Rabbeinu Hagadol Zatzal B'shut Yabia Omer, she'ein lomer bazeh dehayesh b'mitzvahs v'gam lav delo tishkach v'nashim chayavas. So then why don't we still obligate women because of the statement lo tishkach, don't forget, which is a negative? The Yishlomer al pi mashakasu haramban v'haritva v'kiddushin sham de'echa shalav v'lachazek et ha'aseh v'ha'aseh havi mitzvah shehazman grama v'nashim piturot hem piturot gam me'alav shabo. He says because of this idea, when a negative statement is clearly coming to strengthen the positive converse, so then it's not really considered a bona fide mitzvah lo saseh. And therefore one could have argued that just as women are exempt from a time-bound positive mitzvah, they would also be exempt from the negative statement that is appended to that positive mitzvah. Okay, so that's the principle, that you might have thought that a woman is exempt from this mitzvah if it were time-bound. The answer is that Hashavas Aveda is not time-bound, and therefore women are obligated in this mitzvah. Amnam yesha ratzu liftor et hanashim mitzvat Hashavas Aveda kevin shekol kvuda bas melech penima. There are, however, some who wish to exempt women from this mitzvah out of the principle of tznius, that women are meant to stay at home, not to be going around town trying to find the owner of the lost object. Aval halacha ein hevdel ben ish leisha. But halachically, that doesn't apply. In other words, we don't have our wives wear a burqa. There are limitations to the mitzvah of kol kavuda bat melech penima, that women are meant to be modest and not to be out publicly. That doesn't mean that they can't drive, and it doesn't mean that they can't walk in the marketplace, and it doesn't mean that they're restricted in doing a mitzvah that obligates them to interact with the rest of society. So it's important to realize that any kind of Jewish culture, subculture, that has its women so restricted that it precludes them from doing what I just mentioned probably is misaligned. And the proof of that is from the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda. How can the Torah obligate a woman to return lost objects to their rightful owner if a woman can't behave normally within a social context? Okay? And therefore he says, V'chol Aveda she'im ze haya chafet shela hi hayta lokechet oto, kach tzricha lahachazir ba'aveda shel chaverta. And therefore, any lost object, that if it was hers, she would want to hold on to it. So then she's obligated to do the same for her fellow Jew. Avol davar she'isha lo regila lakachat afilu im ze haya shela, lahachazir lechaverta kitin zakein ve'ena lefi chvoda. However, there is a category of items that if it would have belonged to her, she would not be picking it up in the marketplace. Then she's also exempt from picking it up for her friend. Because you have that principle of sometimes something may be put beneath a person's dignity to be seen in public picking that item up. So, I don't know, let's say it's a box of tampons or something. That's the only thing I could think of. Let's say...
Walk around with a basket.
Or maybe she wouldn't walk around with that. Maybe a basketball is a good example. There are certain things that a woman would not want to be seen walking around in the marketplace with, either because it's embarrassing or she would never be seen in public with that item. What's an example that you can think of? A lost object.
I know that's gender.
Maybe a bra. Yeah. Kevin Shadarshu Rabotenu Vihitalanta. Yeah, you're right. A man wouldn't pick it up either because,
Not anything wrong with that.
Actually, thank
I
you
didn't
for
quite pick up on that.
thank you for sharing, Moish. Yeah.
All right.
As our sages say, Vihitalamta mehem, that you are not allowed to hide from them, but it's referenced in a positive context. And from there, the Gemara learns that pa'amim sha'atamit aleim. There are times when you are permitted, according to halacha, to hide yourself from the mitzvah. That if you're a revered elder of the community, and it's beneath your dignity to be seen, let's say, walking around with a basketball, right? So then you're exempt from fulfilling the mitzvah.
If there's the women are allowed to dedicate, it shouldn't, but maybe it's not common. Like it's not a cut and dry thing there.
Yeah. So you see, I think that there are much more limited applications to this halacha than there used to be in the times when this halacha was written. People today are much more open-minded and really couldn't care less what you're walking around with in the marketplace. Yeah. And I think even that's true with great rabbis as well. In other words, people would say, oh, this rabbi's walking around with a basketball. It looks a little bit weird, but let's see what mitzvah he's going to do with them. In other words, people would just.
We started off with Isha Hashupa. And the source, the proof text is Basmela, which is, I think that's Isha Hashupa, right?
Right.
All
Yeah. Yeah, well, he says any woman who would not be normally seen with this item in public, then she's exempt from the mitzvah. Now, just to give you a little bit of the background, he brings this idea from the Shita Mekubetzes, B'Shem HaTaisus Harash. This is going back to the medieval period. Shehevi yesh meforshim shemitzvahs hashavas aveda eina mitzvah hashava bakol. He says this mitzvah of hashavas aveda does not apply equally to every person. Kevin she'ena shayechet b'zakein ve'ena lefich voda v'chein b'nashim mishum dechol kvuda bas melech penima. It doesn't apply equally to revered elders, because there are many times when they're not going to want to be seen with certain items in public, and it doesn't apply to women who aren't given to being out and about in regular society. Now, we could certainly understand if a 14th century Tosafist living in Germany or France would have said such a thing. We could certainly understand that. But the Rosh, Sham Dacha Divrehim. The Rosh, however, himself rejects that assertion. The Sof Sof HaMitzvah Shayechet Bekol, Eicha Shedarka Litol B'Shalo Ayin Sham. The Rosh basically says, anytime if this item were yours, you would have no hesitation to pick it up, then you have an obligation to pick it up on behalf of someone else and return the lost item. So if it's a shopping bag full of groceries, I see no reason why a woman would have any embarrassment picking it up. If, however, I don't know, what if it's a huge 7-foot teddy bear, and a guy sees that it's lost and it says it's got the name Yankee on it, right? So, and so I've got to pick it up now off the side of Route 7. And put it in my car. It's going to look a little weird, but I can't imagine in today's world someone saying, "Oh, this is embarrassing. This is humiliating. If it was mine, I'd never pick it up in public." I don't know. I don't hear it in today's world. The Kain Kasav Od Hashita Mekubetz Sham B'Shem HaTais V'Shans V'Lichoret Sarachiyim. He says, look, it needs a little bit more analysis. Dahrei Isa B'Gemara B'Kiddushin Lahedja. Shanashim chayavot b'hashavas aveda. The Gemara says explicitly that women are obligated in this mitzvah. V'heichayesh meforshim yichtavu neged Gemara mefureshet. How then could any one of the Balei HaTosfos go against an explicit Gemara based on the principle of kol kavuda bas melech penima, that women have to be modest? Va'od kasha de amai HaTosfos harash v'Tosfos shans lo dachu divri hayesh meforshim mehagemara hanal. And why didn't the people who reject this idea, this suggestion that a woman is exempt, why don't they bring from the Gemara itself to show that this is not correct? I noticed that another sefer asked this question. So it seems like this one singular opinion in the Shita Mekubetzes is not saying that women are completely exempt from this mitzvah. Ella de kavanam haita de baderech klal nashim enam chayavos ki ein ze midarkam letapel ba'aveda kevin de kol kavuda v'chul. But rather, they meant to say that in general, women are not obligated because it's not their norm to be engaged with lost items out in the street. And therefore, it doesn't have the same standing with all people. But in theory, women are shayach to this mitzvah because in a situation where she doesn't have to appear publicly out in the marketplace, everyone would agree that women are obligated. Bottom line is, I fail to see the application of this mitzvah. Women are obligated equally as men in the midst of Hashavas Aveda, no woman can say that it's beneath my dignity unless it's truly an item that is so humiliating for her to be seen out in public that if it was hers, she would just leave it and not pick it up. Well, what is she going to do? She's going to have to stand by the item, call someone else on the cell phone and say, I'm standing here. It's going to be even more humiliating. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, let's say, well, I don't know, it's hard because today all the bras, what are you going to see? Just a bra lying there on the street? You know, I don't know. Let's say it was an undressed mannequin, like a fashion mannequin. And then a guy's got a, I'm just trying to think like it's more, this is more the theater of the absurd. Like, what if you saw Rabbi Karapkin walking down Bathurst with a mannequin slung over his shoulder? What would you think? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
I wonder what mitzvah you'll be doing with them.
right. I don't know. I imagine that in theory, such a situation could come up where it's like, I can't be seen in public with such an item, then you might be exempt. But I think that it's quite far-fetched, the applications of this. Okay. All right. Let's go on to the next shaila. Hashavas Aveda b'mashkon shel Yisrael she'ivdo hagoy. Okay, is there a mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda when an item belongs to a Jew but was lost by a non-Jew? Let's see the scenario. Yesh li shachein shelava sikum nichbad shel kesef mechavero she'eino Yehudi. I have a neighbor who borrowed a significant amount of money from a friend of his who's not Jewish. V'natan lo sha'on zahav k'mashkon al hachov. And my friend gave the creditor a gold watch, very valuable gold watch, as collateral. Ha'eno Yehudi ibed et ha'sha'on v'ani mitzativ. The non-Jew lost the gold watch, and I happened to find it. Im ani chayav lahachziro le'eno Yehudi. Do I have to return it to the non-Jew, or can I just return it to my friend? The question is not, can I keep it? The question is, what are my obligations? Who do I have to return it to? Okay. Now, what say you? What is your first impulse? What, gross, Moish? Making that between Jews and non-Jews.
Not moral.
Back to the goy.
Things across the board. We have this all the time. It would also be wrong for the Jew to take the mashkan unless he wants that loan to be called. Right? The Jew takes the watch back, and then the non-Jew lost the security loan, and he could mess up. They could say
Totally immoral. Yeah. It's not right. Okay, so we have a viscerally negative response to this shaila. Okay, I register it. Well, that's the question, right? In other words, ethically, it should go back to the non-Jewish creditor. Yeah. Okay. Moish, thank you for that. You've redeemed yourself from your previous statement. Yeah. Okay. Namar Batorah. Okay, so let's take a look at the Jew. It says in the Torah, Lo tir'eh et shor achicha o seyo nidachim b'hitalamta mehem. Hashev teshiveim le'achicha. So the dilemma is there's no mitzvah really of Hashavas Aveda to a non-Jew. Torah says you may not see the ox of your brother or his sheep wandering and just hide your face from it. You instead have an obligation to return to your brother. Umi shelo machzir aveda shematza, Bitel mitzvah saseh shel hashev teshivim le'achicha. If you don't return a lost item, you have nullified it, or you have squandered a positive commandment. You also violate a negative commandment of you may not hide. And if you keep the lost item for yourself, you're a gazlan. Aval avedat eino Yehudi muteret. This is one of the differences in halacha between Jews and non-Jews. There is no obligation to return lost items to non-Jews. Shenemar v'chein ta'aseh l'chol avedat achicha. So shall you do for anything that is lost by your brother. La'achicha ata mitzuveh lahashiv v'lo lami shehu lo achicha. Gemara says explicitly you're not obligated to return lost items to someone who is not your brother. Now, I want to just make a couple before I'll get you in just a second. Two points. Number one, there's no prohibition in returning a lost item to a Gentile, unless, and as a matter of fact, if you feel you can make a Kiddush Hashem by returning it, then the proper thing is to return it. Secondly, there are many Rishonim who suggest that today the Gentiles who are righteous may rise to the category of a ger, and even though the Torah says it's specifically achicha and not anyone else, but nonetheless, there may be an argument to be made that today Gentiles do not occupy the same space that they did when these halachas were first written. However, it's not clear. Like, what if you have one of these woke pro-Palestinian demonstrators at the entrance of our shul, then afterwards you discover a gold watch to Mahmoud, that belonged to him. I'm not sure if I would have that same feeling of saying, "Oh, let me make a Kiddush Hashem and return his lost item to him."
Palestinian flag.
Yeah. Or let's say you find a Palestinian flag. In other words, yes, can I think of such scenarios where I might say to myself, I think I'm going to rely on this distinction in halacha and not return this lost object? Yes, I think that there are situations where you could make that argument. Go ahead, Mordechai.
Once they pay the loan, he owns back the watch. But let's say that you decide to keep the watch because you don't have a mitzvah to return it to the non-Jew. But now when the neighbor pays back the loan, he needs to return the watch. So it's his watch again to the Jewish. So you need to give him back to them because this I don't know if you understand what I mean. It's like the watch is now, it's in the possession of the non-Jew. But once the neighbor pays the loan,
I do understand that.
He needs.
But so I don't think that we're suggesting that the guy gets to keep it. We're suggesting as a possibility that maybe I can return it to the Jew who borrowed the money. Instead of me giving it to the non-Jew, let me give it to the Jew who borrowed the money, and the loan will be unsecured instead of previously being secured. So therefore he says, Aval b'she'ela hazot, shehamashkon hu shel ha'Yisrael, ve'al smach hamashkon kibel ha'Yisrael mehagoy halva. In this situation, this was collateral on a loan, and it was only based on the fact that the Jewish borrower had collateral that the non-Jew was willing to make the loan. V'cha'et shehagoy ibed et hamashkon, im hamotze lo yachzir lo et hamashkon, hagoy yafsid et kesef ha'halva'a me'achar v'haloi v'lo yishalem lo. If the fact that the Gentile has lost the collateral, the gold watch, if the finder does not return it to him, he will lose out on now having an unsecured loan, and the borrower may not pay him back the money. B'chol zot lo yachzir l'goy et hamashkon. Nonetheless, you do not return the collateral to the Gentile based on a psak from the Shulchan Aruch that we will have to see tomorrow. Okay, so we're entering into turbulent waters now. So let's wait and keep an open mind. keep an open mind and we'll finish this tomorrow.
Thank you.